Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of New Victory Gardening. Getting into my small storage shed here because we are going to plant cayuse oats today. And so I mentioned before that planting cereal grains and growing them can actually be very easy. A lot of our grain seeds are hardy and they grow kind of in the bumper seasons, so not when it's hot and not when it's cold, and likely when it rains, so you don't have to irrigate. And so here I'm getting right now my storage bin, just a bag of oats, organic oat seed that I've had. This seed will last you several years, and so this seed I've had for a little bit, and finally found it, dug it out. You know how that gets. So why don't we walk out to the bed that we're gonna plant and kind of take a look and do a quick overview before we get started. Got the plot here, as you can see, just a normal plot. And I'm gonna plant the bottom part of this plot just because it's good space and it gets full sun. And it'll give you an idea that these seeds are actually pretty hardy seeds. And so I'm still learning all of this stuff. But anyway, we got a beautiful day. It's a bright, like sunshiny type of day. And so I thought I would show how to plant some cereal grains. It's actually really easy, and you don't need that big of a space to get started. And you'll be surprised the yield that you get. But before that, why don't we go look at the other grains I have planted that grew already, right? I think this came from some seed that I got in hay, and I spread the hay out here. And the hay was wheat, and it was barley, and it was triticale. And it looks like the wheat just was more hardy and grew. Yeah, so these are ending near the end of their life cycle. Give them maybe a month. I like them though. Okay, so let's get to work on this garden bed. I usually do this in a couple steps, and so the method you'll see me use here is one we got from our friends over in the Netherlands that plant lots of tulips in the spring. And so they devised a way of planting where you could plant lots of things just by kind of opening out an area. And so I don't have to dig a bunch of individual holes to plant seeds. You can actually just scrape up an area, and the area, you can sprinkle the seed out into the area and then cover it with dirt. And what you find is for a lot of these grain seed, you don't have to go very deep. You can kind of go the depth of the tines of a garden rake, and that's plenty. So here I am just kind of cleaning the bed, cleaning some mulch out and redefining some edges for the bed. We actually had a lot of rain and cool weather the week before, but at this point we had maybe 2 or 3 good sunshine days, and the weather was starting to warm up. And so you see the clay kind of capped there. It has a little bit of a cap on it, and so some weeds grow well in that, but sometimes it's really difficult to work. And so I'm actually a few days over when you should work, but luckily it's still close enough to where all you have to do is wet it down. And so that's what I do. Give it a good wet, and kind of when you're working with clay soil, and it's not mulched like this is, a good rule of thumb is to, think about what some water would be for that, what you might think that would be a good wetting of the soil, and you probably want to water it for 3 or 4 times longer than that, because clay just absorbs and holds a lot of water. So if this was the dead of summer and the soil was completely dry, I would probably water this, let the water soak in, water it again, let the water soak in, then water it a third time, and then it would finally be ready to plant. And I would do that all within several hours. So I would wet it to a puddle and then let it sink in, and then wet it to a puddle again, and then let it sink in, and then wet it to a puddle, and it would probably be ready to work. It'd be, just maybe 2 or 3 inches down, wet even with that, but that's just how clay is. That's why you have to know how to work it. So here I had to get my bigger hoe that has a little bit more force behind it, and my goal here is just dig up, break the surface of the soil, break the cap that sometimes forms when you leave clay soil in the sun, and make it to where I have about 2 to 3 inches of depth of usable soil that I can kind of work my seeds into. And so here I'm chopping up some clods, digging it out, spreading it back in, digging it out, spreading it back in, right, just to get that. And then I'll grab my garden rake and put the garden rake to work evening the bed back out. So the bed's almost ready, strangely enough, but because I didn't mulch this bed and it's been out in the sun for a few days, I kind of had to work the soil back in shape. Lucky because it's kind of getting towards the season where you better mulch clay soil, or else you'll have a really hard time working the soil because it starts to get a cap on it, harden up, and just become really difficult. So I've really become a fan of mulch, because mulch helps keep your clay soil workable until you can get your plants in and your watering system in. And then clay becomes a lot more useful because it does hold water. So if you live in a hot, dry climate like me, you know, it works. I found several worms. So that's supposed to be a worm I'm trying to show you in the camera. It's an earthworm. So earthworms dig their burrows in this clay soil. It just needs to be, moist enough so that they can make their burrows. And so as I was raking it out, I saw a few. And so now I'm going to rake some soil to the side on each side, and my goal is to rake down about the depth of the tines of my garden rake, which is like 2 to 3 inches, and make like just an indentation. So a couple of indentations with the garden rake and the soil rake to one side, and time to get my seed. So this is probably the easiest part of this process. Get seed and spread it out into each of, no, it does not taste good, by the way. Spread it out into each of your little planting areas that you've dug down. And of course, shoo away your dog, who will become very much interested in anything you're planting or doing, just to be sure it's not edible.
Shorty, get.
Give it a nice bed. This stuff can tolerate being crowded, and so to get a better guarantee, it's almost like spreading grass seed or something. You want to sprinkle it in really good, to where you have a seed about every square inch or two, something like that. And that's really it. This soil bed has been prepped. You could probably do this with minimal or no fertilizer. And so I just flipped the soil back on top of it. So the little mounds that I dug out, I used my rake to flip the soil back on top. If there's any big clods, I break them up just so that the seed, when it sprouts, can get through and it's not weighed down under a cloud of dirt. Otherwise, I kind of just leave the soil as it is. The goal is to do this with the minimal interruption to any worm burrows that you have dug in this, and just to get the seed about an inch, maybe 2 inches down, below a bit of soil, and that is all. These grains, they don't have to have super fertile soil. It doesn't have to be. It could be clay. It could be sandy loam. It could be various types. They grow lots of different places. And so the only thing you have to do now is just wet it real good, so you can get your seed started. And so that's what I'm going to do here is spray some water and make sure that this bed that I just planted gets good and thoroughly soaked. And an added bonus to it is that if you wet it good enough, your dog will stay out of it as well. My dog doesn't like to get his paws muddy, and so I know I've wet it enough when he stays out of it. And so give it a good thorough soaking. If your soil was really dry, I would say give it a good thorough soaking and then wait about an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then come back out and give it another good thorough soaking. That way you know that you got water not only into the top inch of the soil, but you put enough to where it can go down and get down below 3 to 4 inches maybe down into the soil to where your seeds are, so there's water above and below them. So as they start to root and grow, they'll have plenty of water. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. It's another reason why you don't have to break clay soil into a fine powder. You could leave some of those dirt clods, just break them down enough to where the seed can get around them. And that way water has some conduits to get down. So if you broke it into a powder, the water would tend to stay at the top. But because I left a few dirt clods and it's not totally uniform, the water can make its way around and get down and under and in as it's soaking down. And that's exactly what you want. And so, in a nutshell, that's all. When you want to plant a grain of any kind, it's pretty straightforward like that. And there you go. Next step would be to mulch this and to water it until the seeds sprout, and you'll have your first shot at growing a grain. They're fun crops to grow. I recommend them to everybody. So good luck. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.